Hello, today I'm going to show you some tips for your geometric Notan design. Once you get to the point of starting the geometric design, you'll follow the same steps, of course, leading up to preparing your square to be drawn and cut. And you'll focus on geometric shapes. It is handy to use a ruler for this project so that you can maintain straight, sharp angles. You will always start on the corner, near the corner on one of the sides, and I'm going to use my ruler just to draw some straight lines. I could do spikes or boxes, other geometric shapes. Sometimes what I like to do is draw it first just to sketch it out to see how I like it, and then I can always use the ruler to draw straight lines. Now with these lines, the bigger sections, it is easier to use a scissors because you don't have to turn the paper as you're cutting. You just cut to the edge and then turn, cut, turn, all the way. I have my first shape that I cut out and I would flip it. Remember, I suggest cutting out your biggest shapes on all four sides and then gluing down your centerpiece first. But for the sake of this demonstration, I just want to show you, once you get to the more detailed parts of your geometric shapes, a tool that will help you. Even for this next shape that I cut out, I'm just going to sketch it on here. I could mirror this image and copy it, or I could do something different. I think I'm going to do something different. Now the tricky part comes in when you want to draw a complex design, but it's very small, and maybe you want to do more than 3 flips and have a bunch of different shapes and have less space in between. If you get to your third shape and you want to draw a simple shape, you can still use the scissors to cut it out. But if I want a very intricate, detailed shape, you can use a different tool to help you cut smoothly and precisely. You can see here that it would be very difficult to maneuver, you can see the lines, it would be very difficult to maneuver my scissors in this small space. So if you do have shapes, once you get to your third shape that you're drawing, or fourth or fifth, you can use an X-Acto blade and a cutting mat to cut the detail. In order to do that, you will take your one piece at a time, up to the X-Acto blade station, and you'll see that you'll have a cutting mat and an X-Acto blade here. What you'll do is always leave the blade at the station and only bring up one paper at a time so everyone has a chance to use the mat. And what you'll do is you will cut your shape out using the blade. I have a couple tips for what I would like you to do in order to cut successfully using the X-Acto blade. One thing that you should do is work on one line at a time and be very careful with it. I'm going to start with this piece, and I'm actually going to cut out to the edge of the paper. And as you're cutting, hold your paper with your other hand away from the direction of how you are cutting. So I wouldn't want to hold my paper right here and be cutting towards my fingers. I'm going to turn the paper and I'm going to cut out this way. Press down firmly and try to cut it through on the first time. Push pretty hard and just do one cut and then let go. Turn your paper to get the other cut. Press down, cut. Turn, press down, and pull the blade. The problem is if you don't think you cut all the way through, you can kind of see here that I was able to cut through, but sometimes on the corners you won't cut all the way through. And if that's the case, it will be stuck. You can either carefully cut it or just pull it apart, but try to be neat with it. The other thing you don't want to do is if you're cutting a line, you don't want to go over it multiple times. If you cut it once, just stick with it, because if you try to do it again, or you try to cut it again over and over again, it will shred the paper, so you'll have pieces of paper sticking off. And we don't want that because that craftsmanship does not look as good. So if you feel like you're doing this, maybe just stick with the scissors. The other thing is you cannot cut curves with this, because if you try to turn, it's very jerky and you're not going to be able to cut very good circles. Keep in mind that if you can't pull it apart, you can look at the back to see where it's not cut all the way through, and you can carefully cut to fix the corners that don't cut all the way. Try not to rip it or pull it, and just take your time turning your paper and cutting away from your fingers. If I see you cutting towards your fingers, that will not be good. So there we have the one piece. You can see the better sections of it where I took my time and just did one smooth cut and then cut again and cut and cut. And you can see the part where I went over my line multiple times and it's a little shredded. So with the X-Acto blade, you can get a lot more detail. Just keep in mind to cut only one time for each section. Press pretty hard to cut all the way through, and always cut away from your other fingers.